Alright, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My name is Denonu, and with this video here, we're going to be talking about the Mortal Kombat movie. Seen the movie about 3 times, and honestly, I'm going to say it's not that great, but I can say it was serviceable. I'm one of those guys where story comes first. So I'm not going to get on here and be like, oh, the movie was great just because it had blood and fatalities. To be honest, the story in this movie was garbage. The budget for this movie was garbage. The acting by a lot of people in this movie was garbage. But I will say that with me being a fan of the games and with me being a gamer, and this movie is tailored to my demographic. I'm 37. I remember going to the arcades when Mortal Kombat 1 was out and stuff like that. So I will say I was entertained, but that's not saying, so much. This movie was missing a lot of things. Story being one of them. The story was kind of... I can't get on here and say that the story was well told. I can't get on here and say that the story was in depth. This movie was a rush job. Even when it comes to like the main character, his backstory, his motivations, like everything about this movie was messed up, I will say. The only thing that this movie gets right is the Scorpion and Sub-Zero stuff. Let's say mostly, because they don't explain the rivalry between the two, but their fights were done extremely well. And let's say the fatalities were done very, very well. If you want to see gory fights and stuff like that, in my regards, that could have been better too. That was still garbage for what they had, but you did have some cool deaths in the movie and some cool fatalities in the movie. So that's why I can't say, oh, it's complete garbage, because it could have been a lot worse. It could have been PG like the first couple Mortal Kombat movies. But by this not being that, they definitely dropped the ball. I don't know who to blame for this. I'm assuming it's the studio, because it's WB. They can't get nothing right. But they put a mandate in to put the main character be Cole Young, and he's the main character of your movie. But as you can see by the poster down there in the bottom left hand corner, where's your main character? All the way in the fucking background. And that's how this movie feels. That poster is an exact replication of how he was in the movie. Him, more than anybody else in this movie, doesn't have a purpose. He is just an exposition machine. He's there for the audience to learn what the movie's about, what Mortal Kombat is about, who all the characters are, stuff like that. And it definitely shows. Like, why is he in this movie, YouTube? Like, it makes no sense. When you watch the movie, yeah, you're learning everything as he's learning things, but he's just in the background, just standing there 90% of the movie. It makes no sense. It would be different if he had some kind of a character arc where it's like he's learning or growing as the movie progresses. That doesn't happen. The only thing I can honestly say is that he found what his special technique was. That was his point in the movie. Everybody else, they were there. Some people they changed, some people they didn't. As far as character, like Kano, they completely changed his character. And I will say that, yeah, he was the best part about the movie, because he was like the comedic relief. But him being the best of a completely shit movie isn't saying a whole lot. I would have rather seen Kano, who actually was Kano from the games, You could have put in somebody else in that comedic slot. You know, it didn't have to be Kano. It could have been Johnny Cage. Why not? You know, he's that comedic guy. You could have had him and Cole Young be in the movie. You didn't have to take away Johnny Cage to put in the main character. Granted, if I was writing the movie, I would cut out Cole Young completely and have, if you didn't want to do the whole Johnny Cage thing, you know, since they kind of did that in the first movie, if I was writing this movie, you could take Sonya and Jax's introduction to the Arcana and the people with the powers and stuff like that, how Sonya exposited, you know, in the movie, when she explained things to Cole, that could have been your intro setup. Have them be your intro characters. You know, you could have started this movie off as if it was like a military thriller, you know, like something like from out of Tom Clancy or something. And let's say, since they're a part of special fucking forces, you can have them, you know, get tasked, and you could do all the military tropes and stuff leading up to it. But you could have them being sent out on a mission, and during that mission, things get all foobar and messed up, just like how Sonya explained it. And then they come across this person, whether it be Sub-Zero or, let's say, somebody else who has superpowers, you know. And then when Jax kills him, if you wanted to, I mean, if you still wanted to go with the Arcana story and everything, you could have Jax, you know, have them just barely scrape by a victory and kill him, and have it transfer to Jax. And then that's when they're like, oh, what the fuck is that? Let's not tell our superiors about this. We don't know, because they'll think we're crazy or whatever. And then have them go back to the States or to wherever, and then try to figure out what the Mortal Kombat symbol means, what the Arcana means, and then that's how you learn about all of that stuff going forward, you know? You could have rewritten this movie a hell of a lot better than what they did. And I don't know if it's the writer's job. I mean, the movie has bad writing. It definitely does. But it could have been a whole lot better. You didn't have to do it the way that they did it. It's like, it just feels like the bare minimum. It feels like shit, honestly. As somebody who's into movies, I'm not expecting Shakespeare, especially out of a video game movie. But the story is already there in the games, you know, where they did it better. You know, it's like, you don't have to try to make a Mortal Kombat movie. It's been done before, twice. Hell, 3 times if you count the Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon movie. I think that was the tournament one, because that was basically Mortal Kombat. You know, that's where they got the premise from. So all you have to do is just get to the tournament, you know, and you could explain all of that different ways, and you could have showed it different ways, and still had, let's say, everybody be the characters that they are in the games. You don't have to change a whole lot, you know. The only part that kind of felt different was the Scorpion and the Sub-Zero stuff. Like I said, that's probably the best part of the movie, is the first 15 minutes during the scene where Scorpion loses his family, and probably the end fight at the end of the movie. This movie feels front-loaded and back-end with that, and then you have everything else in between. And everything else in between is garbage. You know, you had some cool effects, you had some cool CG in there. I'm not saying it's all bad, you know, but it could have been a hell of a lot better. Like, I think the fan service in this game, the blood, the fatalities, and let's say, I'm not gonna say the Scorpion and Sub-Zero stuff, because that's kind of not in there as much. But I think this movie got kind of caught up with, oh, this is a Mortal Kombat movie, so we have to say stuff from the game. We have to show blood. We have to show fatalities. But the fights, that what it's supposed to be about, are shit. You know, having the characters say flawless victory and fatality and stuff doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because there's no tournament. That was Shang Tsung who said all of that stuff in the games. So why are the characters just saying fatality and flawless victory, as if, why are they announcing themselves? It doesn't fit your concept of a movie. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that would be like if I got into a fight with somebody and I knocked somebody out, And I was like, yeah, flawless victory. It's like, fucking no, you wouldn't say that shit in real life. You know, and I get it. It's a movie. It's not real life, but that's the point. The movie is supposed to make you believe that this world is real. That's the whole point of immersion. You know, so every time, at least for me, every time they did that shit, it took me out of it. It brought me right out of the movie, where it's like I was enjoying at least what I'm seeing because it's Mortal Kombat. Like I said, I love the franchise, but then something like that would take me out of it. That and the fact that the movie, when it comes into like I'm gonna say before the halfway point, kind of drops. Once they reach Raiden's temple, I know other people have been saying it on YouTube, it just fucking dies. Like all the momentum behind like that they built up to that point, because like the beginning part is decent. You have they start the movie with the Scorpion and Sub-Zero stuff, then it jumps to Cole, the main character, and showing, I guess, that he's an MMA guy getting his ass whooped. And then you kind of jump into him being attacked by Sub-Zero. And all the Sub-Zero stuff in the movie was fucking great. Like Sub-Zero fighting Jax and him, you know, icing his arms off and stuff like that. I love that. You know, that's why I said this movie isn't all garbage, but the it's like all the Sub-Zero stuff and the Scorpion stuff was done great. And then everything else kind of was in place of that, or in place of fatalities, blood, and the exposition. So when they learn about Raiden and the tournament from Sonya and have to go to Raiden's temple, that feels like the story didn't know what to do. You know, it's like that feels like a TV show where it's like they have to pad out the runtime, or the episodes or the filler content in between the different story beats. That's what it felt like, because then the story kind of dies. Shang Tsung and his team don't do anything, you know, before that. And then it's like, oh, we have to find the temple. And then they go to the temple, get to the temple. And that's when Raiden is like, oh, we're you know, you have to learn about your arcana. And then they go into exposition about that. And then it's like a kind of training montage where it's like, why is this even here? You know? The movie doesn't go anywhere after that, YouTube. It just stays there. And then it like forgets that it has to have a third act and you have to show these people fighting. And then it like jumps to like 30-second fights between like Jax and Sonya and you know the other people that they introduce. And it's like those fights take up like 10 minutes at most, when they should be the point of your movie. That should be the majority of your movie, is the fights. So then it's like you wrap up everybody's little mini fights quickly. I think Cole has to fight Goro, so that's like the longest fight in there, which wasn't all that great. I got problems with that, but that's beside the point. Fighting wasn't good. Goro could have killed him within the first second, but somehow he didn't. Also, Cole's armor superpower, a friend pointed this out and I didn't notice it until after we did our podcast video about it. But his armor, like they fucked up. They just put a shirt on him. So instead of it being CG'd on where it could be form-fitting or put him in a tighter outfit, they just put him in a shirt, and you can see where it's wrinkly and stuff like that. And every scene he was in, it was fucking garbage. It looked like fucking cosplay. But to jump back on the Act 3, like I mentioned before, it's like they jump into the short fights, and it's like they're trying to wrap them up quickly because they want to show you that Scorpion and Sub-Zero fight at the end. You know, and when you get there, it's a cool fight, it's a cool moment. But Mortal Kombat, and I'm gonna say this as a fan, even though Scorpion's my favorite fucking character, Mortal Kombat is more than just Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Even though they're the two most popular people in it, if you're gonna have everybody else, then your movie has to be about everybody, not just about them two. And that's, yeah, they were in the coolest parts in it, but if you want to make your movie coherent and all of that stuff that movies are supposed to do, you can't go into it be like, okay, we're gonna prop up these two, but then keep everybody else on the back burner. Because then you run into problems like with this, where it's like they had to fit their fights in, because they kind of had like a brief skirmish before, and then it's like the movie had to remember coming into Act 3, like, oh shit, we gotta show these people fighting each other. And then it's over with in like 5 minutes, and then it jumps into the Scorpion stuff. But it's just weird when you watch it in sequence. Like it felt like they ran out of time, you know, because it's extremely rushed, and they could have had a better writer tighten things up, make things more cohesive, and make it a whole lot better. Like if you had the Scorpion and Sub-Zero, the Lin Kuei versus the Shirai Ryu clan beef, and let's say, you know, I mentioned it in my podcast episode where we talked about it being a friend, but if you had that be one movie, let's say you didn't even know it was a Mortal Kombat movie, let's say they named it something different, and it was basically a ancient Chinese, Japanese type movie where it's like you show these two clans fighting each other and what their reasons were for fighting each other, where they come from, why Sub-Zero has his ice powers, you know, like, you know, where you're watching both him and Scorpion grow as characters, and then at the end you have them fight, and then Scorpion gets his family killed, and that was the end of your movie. That should have been one movie. And then you jump into this Mortal Kombat, like, oh, years, like 200 some years later, we have this Mortal Kombat movie. And then you can show Cole being the descendant of whatever, and then you can fill in the gaps, and then that explains, like, oh, so that's why they were fighting, because they were a part of this tournament or whatever, you know, in addition to them being mad at each other. So it could have been better written. And then that's the one main problem that I had with the movie. It's just, it was a shit movie because I guess it got caught up in what people think Mortal Kombat should be. And granted, I know the fatalities and stuff, and that's like the big thing in the games, but you're not making a fucking game. You're making a fucking movie. Granted, your subject matter is from the game, but you're making a movie for an audience to watch, not a movie for audiences to wonder where all this shit comes from. Because if you're a regular moviegoer that don't know shit about Mortal Kombat, you're coming into this movie like this is the dumbest shit ever. And they could have explained it in a way, modernized it, and still explain the story of the games, in addition to still keeping all the blood and the fatalities and making it cool. Well, they could have did all of that, but they didn't. And that's my main point of the movie and why I say the movie is utter garbage. But I was still entertained by it. I'm a fan of what it could have been, you know, because this could have been like a really great start of a franchise if they decided to take their time with it, just kind of with the DCEU or whatever they're calling it these days. WB doesn't know how to take its time to build shit. They just want to jump in and do it. And just like I said all throughout the years about all that DC stuff, there is nothing in life, whether it be cooking food, cleaning your house, whether you're having sex with a lady, there is nothing. It's like, well, let me explain that point. Nothing turns out better when you do it fast. That's what I'm trying to get to. If you take your time, do it slow, it always turns out better than if you try to rush it and do it quickly. So that's my main point with this, is that they want to jump into, oh, we're going to show all the stuff that's in the games, like all the flashy stuff, but you're forgetting what tied all of that in together. In the game, it was the gameplay. In addition to, you know, the fighting and the fatalities and all of that stuff. But once the games picked up, it became more about the characters and the fighting and the gameplay and the lore and all of that, all the backstory in between there too. They could have had all of that with this movie, but like I mentioned before, they just didn't either care to put it in or felt they didn't need it. And it definitely shows, because like from what I'm seeing online, the fans of or everybody who's seen this movie, it's incredibly divisive. Some people love it because of the blood, guts, and the gore and the fatalities and stuff, and all of the catchphrases that don't make sense. And then you have people in my camp like myself who look at this as a movie perspective and be like, this could have been good, but this movie was shit. I even talked to a few friends who, let's say, never played any of the good games in Mortal Kombat. Like I have a friend who said that she's seen it and even she didn't like it. And she's not a gamer. She played Mortal Kombat 1 back in the day, and that was it. So she wasn't even comparing it to like the previous movies or anything like that. And she didn't even know about the games and how they were now with the X-ray moves and everything like that. And even she was like, oh, this movie sucks. Kano was good, but the movie sucks. And that's pretty much what everybody's saying, you know. Kano, I will say, even though I don't like that they changed his character, like I said, he's the best part of a shitty movie because some of his jokes were funny. And whenever you make people laugh, they're gonna like him as a character. So he's the best part about this movie, and that's saying something when you have Liu Kang, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero. I think Sub-Zero for me is probably the best, even though it hurts my fucking heart to say that. Sub-Zero in this movie was the shit. Scorpion was kind of like, he's okay, he's badass, but they made Sub-Zero out to be the fucking Terminator of this shit. Like, every time he showed up, he was whooping ass. But anyways, let me stop rambling on, because I could talk about this movie for like the next hour and a half. So let me wrap things up. If you guys want to see me do more commentary videos talking about different movies or animes, TV shows, anything like that, just let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.